Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani, and welcome back to this series on narcissistic types. These are multi-day episodes on these various narcissistic types. That's how dense this stuff is. Lots of people wanted these deep dives and breakdowns of these types to help them understand, because in some ways, narcissism is a tricky bit, because if you're dealing with a covert narcissist and someone else you know is dealing with a malignant narcissist, it's a very different experience. So by understanding the types, you might have different ideas of your experience, your vulnerabilities, and how to deal with it. Today, we're going to be taking on the issue of the malignant narcissist. So today in part one, we're going to have an introduction to all of that. As always, though, if you're enjoying this content, please subscribe to this channel and also hit the bell if you want notifications each day when we post a new video. So let's talk about the malignant narcissist. Now, this is sort of like kind of the most frightening series of episodes in this, because this is where narcissism can feel downright dangerous, more than it usually does. And I often consider malignant narcissism to be the last stop on the train before it turns the direction towards psychopathy. But there are major differences between malignant narcissism and psychopathy. And we're going to talk more about that in a moment, because the distinctions between the two become very important in understanding all of this. So, what is malignant narcissism? It has the same base as all narcissism: little or limited capacity for empathy, entitlement, grandiosity, validation seeking, arrogance, superficiality, all the usual stuff. But in the malignant narcissists, we also observe some other patterns we don't tend to see as much. We can, but not as much in the other narcissistic styles. And these include exploitativeness, manipulativeness, coercive control, and a sense of being very controlling. There is a meanness, a menace, and a cruelty to malignant narcissists that isn't typically observed in other forms of narcissism. Now, as a rule, malignant narcissists are very deceitful. They lie regularly to suit their purposes and to protect their interests and their fragile egos. Now, in people with malignant narcissism, or people who are malignant narcissists, we see patterns we also observe in antisocial personality disorder. Now, that's the diagnostic name to the pattern more of you are used to hearing as being called psychopathy. This is where the territory like deceit and exploitativeness all come in. People who have antisocial personality disorder or psychopathy have a willful disregard for the needs and the safety of other people. They typically manifest a willingness to take advantage of other people, and they tend to be ethically and even legally pretty sketchy. They will bend and break rules and laws and intimidate and bully people for their own advantage. So in malignant narcissism, we also tend to see a focus on themes like power, profit, and pleasure. Malignant narcissists are motivated by power, which they may get by controlling and oppressing people through coercive leadership, through money, any way that they can hold power over other people. They also put their pleasure ahead of the needs of others and even basic safety of others. This tendency means that malignant narcissists, often pursue sexual partners with absolute abandon. And it's really almost like a numbers game for them, or a perversion game for them. And they're also drawn to other addictive or compulsive behaviors. And these can include things like drug abuse, shopping, spending, or gambling. Now, some people may even describe malignant narcissists as being sort of intense, because a malignant narcissist has an almost obsessive focus on the things that bring them power and pleasure. And frighteningly so, this is one of the reasons malignant narcissists become very successful. They become so focused on making money that that's their everything. Now, malignant narcissists can also be quite aggressive. And that aggressiveness can be manifested physically through violence, but also through very psychologically abusive displays of anger, insults, and interpersonal cruelty towards other people. These could be their partner, their family, their friends, anyone. Now, in this way, it's not surprising that malignant narcissists are at a much higher likelihood of abusing their partners and family members, other close associates, and even anyone else who might be in their purview. That could include people that are employees, and that could also include people who are business associates. So interestingly, one pattern we also tend to see in malignant narcissism is almost borders on paranoia. This came up also when we talked about covert narcissism, but this goes well beyond the usual hypersensitivity we see in more classical, grandiose narcissists. So, for example, being overly sensitive even in the face of a constructive critique or normal feedback, or just feeling chronically victimized. In contrast, malignant narcissists often believe that other people are out to get them or are against them. They will often hurl all kinds of unfounded, unsubstantiated accusations about the loyalty or the honor of other people around them. So, for example, they may do something like accusing a partner completely wrongfully of cheating, or they might accuse a family member or a business partner of cheating. You know, ironically, it is far more likely that they are the one that is engaging in the shady, unethical behavior that they would be accusing someone else of. It's as though they're taking so much advantage of other people, they must be assuming everyone else is doing it to them too. They may have all sorts of elaborate security systems on computers and their homes and never let their phone out of their sight. It's actually a signature move. They'll take their phone into the bathroom rather than leave it on the table, even if you're there at the table with them. They can even fall under believing in sort of conspiracies and believing that other entities like businesses or governments are out to get them and harm their business interests in one way or another. Their paranoia, and this is where it gets interesting, their paranoia can often fuel their rage. So this just isn't your good-natured conspiracy theorist that you can sort of laugh at and sort of joke about. These are people who really angrily, sometimes even violently rage at people they incorrectly believe are out to harm them. And that can make any form of relationship with them quite challenging because it is sort of very paranoid and it's really not based on anything in you. It's very much their vulnerabilities and their sensitivities. Now, in some ways, their paranoid fears may be actually somewhat founded because they have harmed and screwed over so many people that in fact someone may be coming out to get them. But it isn't that simple. They really do view the world through a lens of threat. And frankly, it is likely a projection. They are so sort of committed to manipulating, exploiting, and harming other people that it is also quite possible that they project that behavior and intention onto other people. Now, personally, I think that malignant narcissism really lines up beautifully with the work of Paul Hewson Williams, who in 2002 wrote a paper about something called the dark triad. The dark triad is comprised of narcissism. You already know narcissism. You know it better than any student I've ever worked with. You got this. Psychopathy, and something called Machiavellianism. Now, while malignant narcissists aren't what we consider to be psychopaths, as we describe psychopaths in the theoretical literature, and when we look at how psychopaths are written about in the words of classical writers in this field like Robert Hare, in the dark triad, the word psychopathy refers to patterns that include charm, impulsivity, lack of guilt, little regard for the consequences of their behavior, and a willingness to exploit other people. The Machiavellianism part of the dark triad reflects a person who is focused above all on their superficial reputation and is calculating and cunning in a manner that could be viewed as strategic. But their calculated behavior absolutely does not account for hurting other people. They just don't care. They don't care about being unethical, and they're absolutely willing to bend and move the rules to their own convenience to achieve their goal. And the triad, the dark triad, is just wrapped up in a bow of a whole bunch of other personality patterns, including being disagreeable, being callous, and being dishonest. This is not a nice pattern, and yet take a good hard look at lots of leaders out there, world leaders, local leaders, corporate leaders, educational leaders, and they fit the dark triad model quite well. Now, listen, as much as I'd love to, I'm not going to get into the philosophical argument of why we have fallen so far in our societies. If you want that, go read my book, because it's in there. But for now, let's stick to how this pattern looks. The dark triad definitely captures many of the themes of the malignant narcissist. And when you think about it, it really gives you a sense of how potentially dangerous this pattern is. So here begs the question, why would malignant narcissists, with all of their menace and manipulation and coercion, be attractive to anyone? For all the usual reasons that all of these narcissists are attractive, especially the grandiose narcissist. We find malignant narcissists attractive because just like their grandiose buddies, they can be very charming, they can be very charismatic, all the usual stuff. They can be so confident and almost fearless that it looks like swagger. And there is a seeming almost fearlessness that pervades everything that they do. So they may seem like they're much more strong or brave than other people. And this can often trick people who are drawn to relationships that will allow them to feel secure and comforted. And that sort of swaggery fearlessness can create a false sense of comfort, like this person will always go to blows for me. It's a very, very dangerous precedent I've seen in many relationships with malignant narcissists. Now, malignant narcissists may also tend to come on a bit strong. They are more driven by dynamics such as power and control than other narcissists may be. And sadly, these initial peeks in at how controlling that they are can be misinterpreted as someone who's really into you because it's so intense. And this intensity can easily be misinterpreted as intense interest or intense passion rather than as being the foreshadowing of menacing and potentially dangerous control. Because they are so manipulative and exploitative, early on, they may actually seem quite attentive. And just like the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood, they'll give you that, the better to know you, my dear. It's creepy and it's unsettling. Now, in that early stage, though, a lot of their intensity is on intelligence and information gathering about you. They're learning your vulnerabilities, your pressure points, and soon enough, they will turn around and use all that information they gathered to frighten you, control you, and manipulate you. These relationships, sadly, almost pull for a dynamic of obedience. a person may pretty quickly fall into exactly what the malignant narcissist wants. And there's a complex set of reasons for why people almost get into this sort of obedient framework with the malignant narcissist. This can include fear of their overpowering rage, hope that you might win them over if you do exactly what it is they want you to do, as well as long-standing patterns that may have long predated the malignant narcissist in your life of having to capitulate or give in to narcissists since you were a child. And this sort of paralysis of fear is what allows malignant narcissists to draw people in and keep people in. People want to believe the narrative. And malignant narcissists are selling the narrative that they want to believe. Malignant narcissists are the best salespeople around. And they will just keep you on the hook, dangle it there, future faking, whatever it takes to keep you there, until they get what they want from you, and then cut you off and leave you to suffer with no or little conscience. I told you, with malignant narcissists, we often make them our leaders. They could be a local leader, they could be a club leader, they could be a national leader, because we often view them as bold, outspoken, and courageous. And that's often because they are so callous, so they're so willing to make those uncomfortable and unpopular decisions, but the decisions they make are the decisions that will get them what they want. If they just happen to line up with making profits or what other people want at that time, interestingly, people will just blindly go along with their dangerous behavior. And it's interesting because it's this blindly following and not recognizing the malignant narcissists are just doing what works for them. It's in this way that many people end up with malignant narcissistic bosses. They believe the hype. And in many industries out there, it's so sad, law, medicine, academia, finance, you name it, it can feel like you have to go through a hazing ritual to come up the ranks. As a result, the malignant narcissistic leaders are able to get away with their horrific treatment of other people because people think it's just sort of part of the process of working in that particular workplace or industry. So that was sort of an introduction to malignant narcissism, which by now you're thinking, yikes, this actually feels a bit more dangerous than the other kinds of narcissism we've heard about and actually you're going to hear about. And it kind of is. In terms of violence being perpetrated by narcissists, it's very often this. But overall, where it is most compelling with the malignant narcissist, as you're seeing, is this almost menacing, overpowering, unethical, willing to break all the rules, no holds barred narcissism that bizarrely is both enticing and terrifying. So stay tuned. We're going to continue to do this deep dive on malignant narcissism on part 2 tomorrow. So if you aren't scared already, I promise you this is about to get worse. Thanks again for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button. Join us for more of this content. Hit the bell for notifications, and we'll see you soon. See you soon. See you soon.